I'm going to talk about the complication management and avoidance during the cervical spine surgery. When we talk about the health, we always say prevention is better than the cure. In case of the complication, I would say avoidance is better than the management. Complication starts with the decision making. Avoiding complication is best achieved with a meticulous preoperative analysis of the pathology, good patient selection for a specific procedure, and careful execution of the surgery. Cervical spine surgery is being performed for various indications with the aim of decompression of the neural elements and stabilization as and when necessary, which can be done either anterior approach, posterior approach, or combination of both. This is the list of various complications that can happen during the cervical spine surgery. This is a paper published in the Journal of Spine Surgery, systemic review of the literature about the complication of anterior cervical spine surgery, showing the list of various common complications and their pool incidences. I'm going to discuss about some of the important complications and starts with the first, that is anterior adjacent segment degeneration, called ASD. Is defined as a new degenerative changes at the spinal level adjacent to the surgically treated level or level in the spine, that is accompanied by the related symptoms of radiculopathy, myelopathy, or instability. Incidence around 15% in the anterior surgery and 9% in the posterior surgery. Symptomatic ASD at 5 years, prevalence at 13%. At 10 years, almost 26%. There is a 3% risk of developing adjacent segment disease per year. Pre-existing asymptomatic degenerative changes in the segments adjacent to the fusion in the cervical spine is the most important predisposing factor. Possibility higher after a single level fusion than the multiple level fusions. This can be best prevented by the restoration and the preservation of the cervical sagittal profile by doing a fusionless surgery. Plating can hasten ASD if it is placed within the 5 mm of adjacent cranial disc segment, and this should be avoided. Another problem is the esophageal injury. Commonest one is the dysphagia because of the intraoperative manipulation. That is because of the ischemia of the pharyngeal or esophageal wall. Other causes include edema, hematoma, and the infection. Chances increase after more than 2 level of ACF and the revision surgery. Most of the patients will have a resolution of the symptoms within a week, sometimes take months. Most of these patients can be treated with the soft diet via orally or a Ryle's tube. The role of the steroid is debatable in this condition. Esophageal perforation is another problem because of the retraction or the direct surgical manipulation. If it is suspected during the surgical procedure, one can inject the methylene blue through the Ryle's tube and the site of perforation can be identified. Once identified, it can be directly repaired or with the help of the flap coverage. At the level of cricopharyngeal region, posterior esophageal mucosa is covered by the very thin facial layer. So in case of the screw back outs, implant loosening, or the migration, there is a high chance of esophageal perforation. This can be best managed by the broad spectrum antibiotics, exploration, debridement, and the removal of the hardware, primary repair of the esophageal defect using the pedicular muscle flaps, and supplementation of the nutrition via Ryle's tube, gastrostomy tube, or the jejunostomy tubes. When the leak is very small, one can manage esophageal perforation conservatively. This injury can be best prevented by the blunt finger dissection below the superficial cervical fascia and the careful intermittent retraction of the esophagus during the anterior surgical exposure. Postoperative C5 palsy is another problem, can be defined as a de novo or aggravating muscle weakness mainly at C5 region with or without sensory disturbances following cervical spine surgery. There are some peculiar characteristics, more than 50% accompanied by the sensory disturbances or intolerable pain. 92% patient will have a hemilateral. Almost all palsy occur within a week. Incidence is same between the anterior and posterior approach. The prognosis is relatively good even in the patient with a severe muscle weakness. C5 nerve root injury can be because of the two different theories. One is a segmental spinal cord disorder theory, which suggests that anterior horn cell is thought to be chemically damaged because of the preoperative ischemia and aggravation of the reactive oxygen during the postoperative reperfusion. According to this theory, There are various neuroprotective agents such as antioxidant and drugs and calcium channel blockers were proposed, but the effectiveness of these drugs is not being reported. While in case of the other theory of nerve root injury, thought to be caused by the mechanical compression or the distraction of the entire nerve rootlets or nerve root. By contrast, for nerve root injury theory, because this theory is based on the mechanical factors, various surgical intervention developed, which includes avoiding excessive prolonged lateral stretch on the multifidus muscle, doing a foraminotomy in advance while performing a cervical laminoplasty, avoiding posterior shift of the spinal cord by limiting the angle of open lamina and also by limiting the width of the resection of the lamina. Once injury happens, elbow should be flexed and shoulder should be slightly abducted to decrease the distraction force to the C5 nerve root. And this can be best achieved by simply putting a pillow under the axilla with the patient lying in the bed. Bone graft failure related problem, mainly in cases with the corpectomy, because of the larger destabilization of the anterior column, there are very high risk of graft migration, graft dislodgement, infection, and the pseudoarthrosis. Most of this graft dislodgement happens within 24 hours. Grafts can also fracture, collapse, subsidize, or there will be non-union. When the posterior column is deficient, greater compression, the shear loads on the stud grafts increases the risk of fracture, subsidence, and the dislodgement. Partial dislodgement can be treated conservatively, while the total dislodgement requires the revision surgery. Posterior instrumentation and fusion required when anterior multilevel fusion collapse or the graft subsidence happens, especially in case of the osteopenia. This can be best prevented by the good preparation of the graft, obtaining a parallel fusion beds, and seating the graft under the load from the cortical bone. 2 or 3 levels corpectomy should be supported by the posterior instrumentation. Pseudoarthrosis is a late complications. There are various factors, and the smoking, osteoporosis, and NSAIDs increases chances of pseudoarthrosis, diagnosed mainly on the lateral flexion extension X-rays. This can be best prevented by using a bone substitute, which includes the bone morphogenic proteins. Recurrent laryngeal nerve injury is one has to be very aware about these complications. One can see the course of the on the right side, nerve almost pass beneath the right subclavian artery, while in case of the left side, almost go beneath the aortic arch. The chances of injury very high on the right side compared to the left side. Recurrent laryngeal nerve injury will result in hoarseness, dysphonia, and vocal cord palsy. Most of this deficit improves partially or completely over a period of time. There are various causes described in the literature regarding the nerve injury, and among them, retraction or overstretching resulting in neuropraxia is the most important thing. Safe side to approach is a controversial. Some studies show the no difference between the side of the approach and the incidence of nerve palsy, while on the recommended left-sided approach. Right-sided approach is technically easier as most of the surgeons are right-handed. The risk is increased when the surgery is performed below C4 and in case of the revision surgery. This injury can be best prevented by avoiding far lateral ligature of the inferior thyroid vessels, proper careful dissections, placement of the retractor blades under the longus colli muscle belly, use of sharp tooth retractor blades rather than the plain. Revision surgery, one to minimize the iatrogenic injury from the exploring a scar surgical field. Other side should be used, while in case of the previously laryngeal nerve injury, to avoid a potential risk of bilateral vocal cord palsy, approach from the same side is recommended. Dural tear and the CSF leak are the important complications. Incidence increases with the revision surgery. Risk factor includes the old age, thin dura, because of the chronic compression, ossification of the ligamentum flavum, and the scarring from the previous surgery. One has to use the ligamentum flavum and the posterolongitudinal ligaments as they are a helpful barrier. Whenever possible, there should be attempt to repair the tears. Fat, fibrin glue, and mesh coverage can be best utilized. Persistent CSF leak, fistula, or a pseudomalinogen, one should consider for the revision surgery. Bone graft harvest site problems can be minimized by watertight closure, use of drain, careful handling of the soft tissue, avoiding excessive retraction, minimal subperiosteal dissection, and oblique incision, especially while taking a bone graft from the posterior crest. One can easily damage the superior cluneal nerve as they cross lateral to the posterior superior iliac spine. So, despite the benefits of cervical spine surgery, there are still many possible complications. Careful knowledge about the important structures and their handling helps in prevention. Most complications are manageable with adequate preparations. When carefully and properly executed, cervical spine surgery can be effective with an acceptable rate of complication. Thank you. Thank you.